Welcome to episode 44 of FBI Retired Case File Review with Jerry Williams. I'm a retired agent writing crime fiction inspired by actual FBI cases. In this episode, we speak to Karl LNU. LNU is an FBI acronym that stands for Last Name Unknown. In this case, it's going to stand for Last Name Unused because Karl asked me not to use his last name. Karl was a cooperating witness, working with agents in a multi-agency, FBI, postal, and IRS investigation looking into the business-to-business telemarketing fraud industry. Karl was in that business and was investigated, charged, and convicted of bribing corrupt purchasing agents so that they would approve invoices for way overpriced, and inferior lighting and maintenance supplies. The scam was operated by phone. Karl, his partner, and their employees made telemarketing calls to unsuspecting businesses throughout the United States and ripped them off with the help of their own greedy employees. Karl pled guilty and served time for this business-to-business telemarketing scheme. But his sentence was significantly reduced based on his cooperation. I am just thrilled to have had the opportunity to talk to Karl. I've been talking to all these agents, over the last year about their cases, and now I get to talk about mine. Yes, this Group 2 undercover business-to-business telemarketing case was one of my cases that I worked with my United States Postal Inspection Service partner. The case resulted in 16 search warrants and 25 convictions. I'm very proud of it, and I am so excited to have the opportunity to showcase what I did in the FBI and to talk to Karl and give you an idea of the working relationship between an agent and a cooperating witness. Before we get to that interview, I have just two things that I want to say. One, I just want to make sure you know that there will not be a podcast episode for the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So that is no podcast episode on November the 26th. I've got a lot of things going on, family coming in, and you know what? A girl deserves a break. So I'm just going to take off a week, and I'll be back with you on Saturday, December the 3rd with another exciting episode of FBI Retired Case File Review. I hope you take the time to either go back and listen to episodes that you haven't had a chance to listen to yet, or to go back and listen to one of your favorites. The other thing that I wanted to say to you is you rock. You guys are awesome. I'm just so excited. The sales for Pay to Play, my crime fiction about a female FBI agent investigating corruption in the Philadelphia strip club industry, is doing very well. It's the podcast listeners who are buying the book and supporting me, and you guys are just awesome. I have to read some of the reviews. I have a 4.8 rating out of 5, and I'm just ecstatic about how well things are going. Don't forget, if you love the book, please let everyone know. Please get in your reviews so that more people can find Pay to Play and I can meet my own personal goals. I'm just a little bit of ways, and so I want to get there by the end of the year. Consider purchasing maybe a few books for holiday gifts. It doesn't make a difference whether you download the ebook or get the trade paperback. It's a great book, and all of my hard work is paying off, and I am just so excited, and I just want to say thank you. And I know I said it before, but you guys rock. So let me just read real quick a few of the headlines for the reviews that I've received to date. Excellent crime fiction. A captivating, fast-paced FBI novel. Pay-to-play yields great dividends for realistic fiction. Williams knocks it out of the park. Waiting for book 2. Wonderful first novel. Great buy, 5 stars. Can't wait for Williams' next book. Suspense-filled drama throughout. Page turner about the FBI and corruption. Twists and turns of an FBI agent working a case. A steamy, seamy ride. Oh, I love that one. So keep sending me love. I am just so excited about the support that I've been getting from you podcast listeners. So keep buying, keep reading, keep sending in those reviews, and I'll keep bringing you more exciting FBI case reviews like the one you're about to hear. Here's the show. Hi, everyone. I want to introduce my guest today, and his name is Karl. And Karl, we've agreed not to use your last name, so welcome.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm glad to be here.
I've already explained to the listeners, who you are and how we met. But I would like to just learn a little bit more or tell them a little bit more about your background. So if you can give us kind of an overview of how you got into the business-to-business telemarketing industry.
Well, I got into the industry at a young age. I was 19 years old, right out of high school. And without an education, I started looking in the help wanted ads. So I answered an ad, no experience necessary, help wanted. I went on a job interview, Delta Products it was called. And they had a great training program there. They actually taught us telemarketing all over the country. And what we were selling was light bulbs. Light bulbs, trash can liners, cleaning chemicals, things on that nature. And the script would go. I remember being there, and the script would go. You would call. They said you want to find a taker, and that's how at 19 years old I'm sitting here listening to these managers saying you're going to get on the phone and you're looking for a taker. I said, okay, great. So what they do, you call up, say, is the maintenance man around? And then they would even give you little things to get by the secretary. Okay, what they would tell you to say is, the maintenance man, what's his name again? Oh, you mean John? That's it. Can you put him on the phone? That was in the script. And I became really good at it. Hey, is the purse agent around? George, that's it. Can you put him on?
Now, what's a taker? You mentioned the word taker. Yeah, that's who you were looking for. Explain that to us.
The way the business was set up, what we were doing, and I don't want to make any excuses for what I was doing back in 19. We were bribing and overcharging. Okay, it took me a lot of years to understand that, because in the beginning, what they do, we would call up and say, "Hey, George, it's." I would use an alias name. My alias name back then was Gene Reynolds. So at that point, I would say, "Hey, George, it's Gene Reynolds over at the Delta Products. I just want to let you know, we got a new catalog coming out." Jerry, there was never a catalog.
But you would tell people there was a catalog. Why would you do that?
Just to warm up, to build a rapport with the guy.
Well, it sounds like also to give a sense of legitimacy to the company. This is a company that's big enough to have, a full-color catalog that they send out to people.
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, I didn't even understand a lot of what I was doing in the beginning, and I was just going by a script, But you're right. So what I would do is I would say, "Hey, I got the catalog coming out to you. I know it's summertime. If you need anything in the fall, let me know." Okay. In the meantime, we're sending out promotions. I got a nice little fishing rod for you, and I just grab your home address, and let me see if I'll get it out to you within the next day or two.
Why the home address?
Well, that's where you look for the taker. Okay, that's when you know a guy's a taker or not a taker. At that point, he would either be belligerent and say, I don't want nothing, or you wait for the home address, because it's just private. We're bribing this person to give us an order. So we're looking for that guy that's used to taking a bribe for an order. So once you knew you had the home address, you had the guy.
And how's that? Why would you not send it right to the business? I know, and probably the listeners can get an understanding, but I want you to tell us.
Sure. Well, I mean, these maintenance men, they want to keep it a secret what they're doing because, I mean, they're stealing from the company too. They're taking a gift. And Jerry, it started as fishing poles, golf clubs, but then all of a sudden it went to a Sears gift certificate. And then all of a sudden it goes to cash. So, but you start off soft, sending things to their home address in private so the company doesn't find out that these people are taking gifts, you know.
All right, so once you've identified a person who's a taker, somebody who's willing to give you their home address so that you can send them a little something, then what happens?
Well, once I knew they were a taker, okay, and I would get their home address, I would say, okay, great, okay. When you get the catalog, you know, let me know when the fall comes in, you need anything, and I'll be able to help you, okay? In the meantime, what I'm going to do right now, which is said in the script, Jerry, I'm going to send you half a box of light bulbs and a 5-gallon jug of degreaser, and that's it. Let me know when you have the big orders ready. And that would be the end of the script. And then to get the order, and then they would say, okay, great. Do I need a PO? And then at that point, I remember the script. It said, do I put that to your attention, George, or do I need a purchase order number?
And what did you want them to say?
I want them to say, hold on, let me get a PO number, or just put that to my attention. But the whole idea every single time is to pick up the phone, find the taker, and get the person to take a box of light bulbs. And everything was softened. You know, as you notice what I said, a half a box of light bulbs. You could put 100 bulbs in a box. You could put 200 bulbs in a box. A half is relevant. The way the script was set up to make it sound like I'm just going to send you something small.
And I just want to skip ahead a little bit so that we could talk about the business-to-business telemarketing fraud as a whole, and then we'll go back and go into some of the details. Tell us a little bit more and what you know about it and how prevalent it is or was. I'm not sure what's still going on in the Philadelphia area.
Well, first of all, Jerry, it is a fraud. Okay, and if we're talking about the maintenance supply business, I mean, most recently, I'm hearing stories already of mutual friends of friends, of people that just got out of jail after doing this for so many years. They're back in the business, and what they're doing is more horrible. They're putting the names in their kids' names. It's the only way they know how to make a living. But like I said, when I started this at 19, you know, I didn't know what was going on. You know, I was married. I was getting ready to get married. You know, I was married by 21, bought my house by 22. So I was pretty deep into it financially, and I was in the business. So, you know, real quickly, I'm working for this company, of Delta, for the first year. Then what they do in the industry, the other bigger guys, they find out about you and they steal you from one company to the next. And that's where I met Progress Chemical and Maintenance. He actually made his own chemicals and things like that, and he had a big operation. He had a telemarketing room, I would say, of 50 people, and he also had a bunch of people on the streets. But Jerry, whether you're on the phone or on the streets, it was all the same thing. You were bribing people and overcharging them.
Could you give us an example of how much you overcharged?
I remember, because light bulbs, what they did, they called the industry bulbers, these guys. Me too, at the time. And what we would do, if a 4-foot fluorescent cost $1, they would sell it for $10. So everything was times 10. And you would make everything real vague, Jerry, okay? Because when you're buying a 4-foot fluorescent bulb, you know, and you're trying to get $300 for that box, you know, because once again, you know, if you're buying for $1, 30 of them, that's $30. Times that by the 10, $300. So if the maintenance man will receive the gift at home, but the bill would go to accounts payable. And accounts payable, if they see a bill for 30 fluorescent light bulbs, it's going to be a red flag. They're not going to pay that bill. So what the company did, and what the company taught me, the industry, they called it an F40T12/CW. They get that code from on the bulb, and it makes it look like something mysterious that you would buy, and they would pay the bill.
And so it would look like it was something that could possibly be worth $300.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Jerry, that's where you start. A starting order would be the fishing pole, a set of golf clubs for a $300 order. Now you would see if the bill gets paid. Now you sit back and say, okay, will this bill get paid? And in 30 days, 60 days, when the bill gets paid, now that's when I was taught, now you hit them bigger. So once it was a $300 bill, the next bill would be $600 until you move these people up to $1,000 bills.
Okay, you got somebody who's a taker and you're sending them invoices and product, and it gets so good. Isn't there a point where their storage room is not going to be big enough to accept all of these products that you're invoicing and sending them?
It happens all the time. When somebody will leave, and I'm guessing they got fired because of what they did, and you call up and you ask, hey, is George around, the maintenance guy, because you've been dealing with him for a year, and you've been sending him all these invoices. Oh, George is gone. Who took his place? John. Okay, can I talk to him? Hey, John, it's over at the supply house. You guys got that guy fired. There's stuff in the attic. There's stuff in all the closets. There's no room for everything. And they hang up the phone on you.
So that one is done. You've burned out that particular taker.
That's very common in this industry. Very, very common.
Now, what happens? Have you ever? I know I've heard of this, but have you ever then just started when the taker tells you, "I got too much stuff here"? Have you ever just invoiced them and not send any product?
I actually never did that, but I know people who have done that. In fact, I think my partner, when I was in business, have done that unbeknownst to me. You know, no, I never done that, but I know it was common industry. And and once again, Jerry, don't forget, I never thought this was illegal until I met you the day I was served a subpoena. So the whole time it was unethical and moral. So I wasn't about to do anything illegal in my mind. Even once again, I don't want to make any excuses. This was wrong from day one. I should have never done anything, and I don't want to make excuses for it. We were bribing and overcharging people and stealing money from the company. That's what we were doing.
Now, you mentioned the fact that myself and my partner, Postal Inspector Ed Matthias, did come to your office and we did give you a subpoena. Can we talk a little bit about why we targeted you first? Because there were so many companies doing the same thing in the Philadelphia area, but we came to your company first. What was it that kind of gave the red flag?
Well, this is a great story. I worked for a company after Delta called Progress Chemical Maintenance, which I described to you. Progress Lighting is a 100-year-old lighting fixture company. So I remember Stan telling me he picked the name of Progress Chemical and Maintenance so it associates when people pay the bill with Progress Lighting. I always kept that in the back of my mind. And I was like, okay. So I just, understood where he picked the name from. So when I started my business with my partner, I said, well, let's pick a company like Progress Chemical Maintenance. Let's pick a big company and just put lighting and chemical in the end. So I picked a company called W.W. Granger's.
That's a pretty big brand.
I didn't know any different, Jerry. All I knew is to duplicate, what I did, what I learned in the industry over the last 10 years. Or I think I was in the business 7 years by the time I opened up my own business. And that's what we did. We ran with that. It was called Granger's Chemical and Maintenance. So what happened was we started invoicing people. People were paying bills. In fact, people paid bills to Granger's to us once or twice. We never cashed them, but we did get them once or twice. But we wanted people to associate the Granger's. So when they piled the bills up and paid them, they just saw Granger's. They weren't thinking it was some little mom and pop, some telemarketing room in Northeast Philadelphia.
Which it was.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was. Yes, it was. No, we weren't Granger's, but we wanted to pretend we were.
And so what happened?
When you came in and brought light to us, because that's the thing that brought light to us. I remember the lawyer that I hired was telling me, he goes, the grandson of Granger's is taking this so personal. He wants to hurt you guys forever. He wants you guys bankrupt. He wants you guys in jail. This is real bad. and he's not going to stop until he gets his way. This is the story the lawyer's telling me that came back from Granger's. And I'm picturing this company in Chicago on the top floor of this 100-story building with this boardroom meeting going about me that picked this name in Northeast Philadelphia in this little hole in the wall telemarketing company. I was like, I was in over my head. I was way in over my head. But that's how you came to me first, because I shined a light on us by picking the name Granger's. In fact, I remember, to move forward a little bit, I ended up being in a halfway house for my sentence, and I know we'll get to that. But I remember my partner always saying, "Karl, you picked a name. This ain't my fault. I shouldn't be here with you. You picked the name." He would always say that. He didn't laugh.
Now, did Granger's ever contact you before they contacted the FBI and the Postal Inspection Service? Were you made aware that they wanted you to stop using their name?
In fact, now that you say it, yes, they did. But I forgot all about that. We got a cease and desist letter. And I remember talking to my partner about it and my father about it, and they told me to ignore it. And that was the advice I got to them. And I remember we were still using the name for a while until we ended up changing it when we got served a subpoena. And it got real ugly.
Yeah, that was some bad advice. Because I believe that the legitimate company, Granger's, contacted both the FBI and the Postal Inspection Service. That's when I teamed up with my partner, Ed Matthias, and we started looking at the industry, and we realized that it wasn't just a small company that had used a Granger name, but this was a huge problem, a huge fraud that was being perpetrated in the Philadelphia area. And so, you guys became the very first case that we looked at, and of course that morphed into a major Group 2 undercover investigation. But let's get back to the story. And so you are doing business, and Jerry Williams, FBI agent, and Ed Matthias, postal inspector, show up at your business, and they issue a subpoena for all of your records. Tell me what you were thinking.
I'm married, and I have 2 little kids, and I have no skills. So what I'm thinking, I'm scared. I'm in way over my head. I'm in my 20s at this point. And
how much were you making at this business?
I would say about $100,000 a year. And
that's pretty good for somebody who has a high school education and is in their very early 20s.
Absolutely. No, it was a very rewarding business. And some of the money these other people made, where they stayed in it many more years than I did. You got to remember, too, you came to me. I opened up my business called Granger's from day one. So I shined a light on us real quick. So I never got to gather the big money where these guys used to bring in millions. So after I worked for that Progress Chemical and Maintenance for years, opened up my own business, and we got hit with this, within a year, we were hit with this pretty quick. So at that point, I was scared. And I remember even when I did change the name from Granger's to, I called it Coleman Products. And I separated with my partner. And I was scared every day. I'm coming to work every day, and I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had a stay-at-home wife at home, and I had 2 kids. The one saving grace we did have is my ex-wife now, but she was going to school to be a teacher. I was trying to get to that part of my life where I can get her educated and raise my kids properly and all them things, and I was cut short a little bit on it from my own doing, from my own ethics and everything like that. So after Neil left, my partner, and Coleman, you guys came back, and I was served, I don't know, again would be the term, but it never went away. We were being investigated all that time. And that's when I had to hire my own lawyer. And I hired a lawyer in Philadelphia. And at that point, he didn't even advise me to shut down my first lawyer.
So that's why you just changed the name to Coleman, and you were still doing the same thing, looking for the taker and sending the overpriced product.
Doing the same exact thing. This lawyer didn't advise me of anything. Like, he didn't even see where anything was wrong. It wasn't until I changed lawyers, and I can't remember how or why I did. I know my Aunt Miriam, she passed last year. She said, you need help. She had a lawyer named Neil Jokelson. very well-respected lawyer in Philadelphia. She said, why don't you talk to my friend? So I went there, and he didn't have time for me for a few weeks, but he met me at 6 o'clock at night with my aunt one day after court, and we sat in his office, and he says, this is big. You're in trouble. I dealt with cases like this before, and you need help. You need real help. First of all, you need to shut down the business. If another check comes in, I don't want you cashing it. He gave me the right advice.
So the first lawyer looked at this as almost like a civil case where you just need to change your name and not use Granger, even though we had the FBI and the Postal Inspection Service, which is criminal. He just didn't get it.
No, he didn't get it. He didn't get it. And I paid him a lot of money, which, of course, you know how that works out when you pay him. You don't get any money back. But Neil Jokelson put me on the right track. He put me on the right track. Yeah, this first guy, he said, change the name. And coming from my background, my father didn't see anything wrong with this either. You don't forget too, Jerry, I was in an office right next to my father. My father owned a hair salon right next door. And I'm right next door to him. So my father was once finally proud of me. I'm running a successful business. I have employees. I have shipments coming in. And he didn't even see the problem with it from the way I was raised.
All right, well, let's get into that. You say from the way you were raised, because you knew that it was probably unethical. You said that. You knew that it was probably, not a moral thing, as far as trying to bribe people. But you said that you didn't know it was illegal. But when you talk about your background, if you could get into that a little bit more, because you've shared with me that your father and your grandfather were both jailed. You had gone to jail, had been arrested, and had been in jail for being con men. So it's almost like you kind of fell into the family business. So tell us a little bit more about your father and your grandfather's brush with crime.
Well, I'll start with my grandfather because I barely know him. My grandfather was from Sicily. He ran with Al Capone, Salvatore, and he ended up doing 30 years in Alcatraz. Wow. And I'm talking murder, kidnapping, things on that nature, the things that Al Capone and the mob did. That's how involved he was. Never got to meet him. I think I met him once, and that was my, because he was in jail his whole life. My father was raised by this man. So my father, he learned very quickly how to spot the scam. And what I mean by that, I remember back in the 70s, and we were young, my dad had a dating service. It was on Rawn and the Boulevard in Northeast Philadelphia, and it was called the Dating Game. And what he would do is he would place these ads, and he would look for people no different than what today is, Jerry, with catfishing. These people that catfish are imagining that they're meeting somebody. My father would take advantage of people's loneliness by putting these ads and saying, if you're a guy, you're going to meet a girl, you're going to fall in love, she's going to be beautiful, she's going to be great. And if it was a girl, you're going to have the husband you always wanted. And this was going on in the 70s. And guess what, Jerry? He had a telemarketing room. The people would come in, and he would sell them for thousands of dollars. And I remember the one time they didn't have money, took the guy's car. It was a 68 Thunderbird. I'll never forget it because he took us down the shore that weekend in that car. And we were like, where'd you get the car from? And, the guy didn't have money to buy his dating service. And some of the stories, Jerry, that came out later, because you get a lot of guy applicants that are giving him a lot of money, he would send not legitimate women out there because a lot of women, weren't available. He would send the secretaries in the office. So, just to keep the scam going. I mean, to him, he was running a dating service, and I guess there are legitimate things where you can, but he knew the emotion of the way people felt when they're lonely, and that's why he opened it up, not to help people. Okay? Another scam he got into, he had a company called Lickety Whip. It was a beverage company, and what he did was he would have these beverage machines on the boardwalks, in the pizza parlors, where you can buy either a pina colada or a strawberry banana colada. And what he would do is, now, the company didn't sell beverages. What he did was he sold businesses. So he would take 10 of these machines and the beverages, and he would put an ad in the paper, help wanted. And then people would call, I need a job. He would invite them in. You're going to have a job. Okay? You're going to run this route for me. So little by little, Jerry, he's talking about running this route. But in reality, and then little by little, he says, okay, now you're going to take a loan out for this route. And all of a sudden, these people find themselves buying this route. And that's what he would do. He would bring people in their 40s, maybe early 50s. He knew they had money, because if it was a 19-year-old kid calling, I need a job, he would say, okay, we'll call you back. But if it was a 40-year-old guy, chances are he had some money, or you can put it on a credit card or something. So he took advantage of people that way. He sold them these businesses, and Jerry, nobody's ever going to walk up to you and say, I have a great business idea. My father made it sound like this was the best business idea in the world, and you're going to make $100,000 a year every single time.
And was the business profitable?
If you worked it, you had real machines, you had real beverage, but not everybody's built to own a business. And he knows when he had somebody in front of him. He didn't put a business for sale out there. He put help wanted, looking for that person, desperation for a job. Because that's a very vulnerable place to be, looking for a job.
All right, you're saying that this business was legitimate, or could be if you really worked it. Then why didn't your father just really work it? Why was he selling the concept instead of working the business?
That's what my father understood. He understood the concept of people motivation behind they want something. He once again, my father, he wasn't looking where some people have dating sites and stuff like that. They want to help people get together, okay? Some people want to make beverage companies where they want to quench their thirst and have a really something good. He wanted to sell the dream of having somebody, okay, in your life, like a dating service. Or he wanted to sell the business of...
He wanted to make money.
Absolutely. He was all about money. That's how he raised us, every one of us.
So that's why, even though you knew the business was at least unethical, you were okay with working it. You were okay with calling somebody up, bribing them, even though you know at some point this guy is going to get fired. Absolutely. I was all right with it. And I used the phrase everybody used, it's business. And they toss that phrase around. Me and you are sitting together now in better circumstances 20 years later. So, of course, I'm a better person now. When I raised my kids were all about education. I don't want to hear anything else. My brother was drilled into him to make money, okay, to run businesses. That's how my brother was raised. And my brother couldn't get out of that mindset. When my father passed, my brother couldn't get past it. So at about 49 years old, he actually took his own life. Was he also running a business that might have been questionable? Absolutely. Yeah, he went to Michigan, and he ran one of my father's he was trying to sell pick-up and delivery dry cleaning routes. Now, once again, Jerry, yeah, they're legitimate businesses, but my father taught my brother and I how to look for that one person by putting help one ad in, and look for that person just looking for a job. And then they're so desperate for money and they're not sure where their lives are going, so they buy this small business. So my brother went off to Michigan and started that business, and he sold a few, and he got himself in trouble. Not paying taxes, not paying the rent out there. My brother also had other issues. He was an alcoholic. And after my father died, my father really took care of my brother. It actually crippled him, And what I mean by take care of him, make sure he had beautiful place to live, make sure he had cars all the time. I'm talking Lincolns and Cadillacs and BMWs, really nice cars all the time. So actually, he crippled my brother. So when my father passed, my brother, he didn't know how to make a living anymore. He didn't know how to do it. He only knew how to set up these businesses or look for that person that's desperate instead of doing something legitimate. What made the light bulb, pun unintended, but what made that go off in your mind that you wanted to straighten up? Because and we'll go back and talk about the case and everything that you did and how it all worked out for you. But when you came out of that business, you've already talked about other people who went right back in. You didn't. What was it that made you realize, you know what, I can't do this?
And I don't know what clicked. And I have to go back to the way I was raised again. My father didn't pay bills. He didn't pay credit card bills. He didn't pay the oil delivery bills. He didn't pay the mortgage. I can still remember a time when he put a new fence in, put a new front door in, had carpet put in. And I'm 9 years old, and he says, stand by the front door. They're trying to steal everything from us. So the people that put the fences in and the carpets in and the doors in, they came back. They wanted their stuff back because he wasn't paying the bills. And I remember going to school, and he wouldn't pay the tuition, and he wouldn't come even try to pay the tuition until they're ready to throw me out of school. And so when I was raised, I remember, and we never paid car insurance back then in my family. My father said, yeah, just make up some numbers and give it to the person for the car, and that'll be your car insurance. They don't match things up. That was back in the 80s. Things are different now. But when I bought my first car, that's what I did. When I got a hospital bill, I didn't pay it. Jerry, something clicked with me back then to say, I have to start paying these bills. So I actually went to a local Staples, whatever Staples would have been back then, and I actually set up a ledger of all the bills I owned. It was a lot. And I started paying them $10 a month on all these bills, so I paid them off. I wanted to stop the ways my father taught me. And it's the same thing when I left the business. It was unethical and moral. Now I'm finding out it's illegal, everything I went through, and the people that went in jail. I just want to change. I don't know where I was going to go, but I knew I needed some kind of change. And I remember even, once again, I talked about me being in that halfway house. When I got out, I was with my family for one more year, my father, working for him. But that was it. I walked away, and I never looked back after that.
Wow. All right, let's go back to the case, because the big thing about the case and the big thing about our relationship is that you became a cooperating witness. And the difference between a cooperating witness and an informant, the informant tells you what's going on in the industry and they just provide information. But a cooperating witness actually, works with the investigators in order to help them move the case along, with the understanding that at some point their identity is going to be known and that they are probably going to testify in any resulting criminal trials. And so when we came to you with the offer of advising the judge of your cooperation so that he would give you a downward departure in your sentencing, when we offered you that possibility of being a cooperating witness, did you have to think about it too long?
Jerry, I had a stay-at-home wife going to school and 2 kids. I didn't have to think about it too long.
And I take it also that your attorney, who had already worked, with federal criminal cases, also advised you that this probably would be the best way to go.
Absolutely. Neil really pointed me in the right direction during this whole case, doing the right thing. And I remember, cooperating with you, just explain to you little things about how we invoice, how we trick people into paying for a light bulb for $10 by writing F40T12CW, all these little code things that make people think they're getting more than they really are. And pointing out, different people in the industry and how I got started and where it went to all over the Delaware Valley.
I do want to explain to listeners that you hear about these telemarketing cases all the time, and the FBI and the postal inspectors don't have the manpower or the resources to do individual cases. They just can't look at one business and investigate them. It's not cost effective. And so what we try to do is to go after the industry at the same time and do a multi-subject investigation. So we started out with Karl's company as a way of us getting into the industry so that we could do what became a Group 2 undercover investigation where we targeted the entire industry. And the way that we did that was through leads. And so, Karl, could you tell us more about what leads are and how they're vital to the telemarketing industry?
Well, In the beginning, you're given a phone book or an industrial directory of all the companies in the country, or a phone book of whether it's California or Arizona or Texas. And you go through this phone list and just start calling companies looking for the taker, as we talked about earlier. Once again, the taker is when you say, hey, give me your home address. Once you had the home address, you knew how to taker. Okay. Once you had them to take the products and ship it out, if they paid the bill, now you know you had a decent lead. So out of a couple days worth of work, you may end up with one invoice paid, which is a lot of money. Okay. But that one, over years, these leads pile up. Now instead of going through a phone book, if you can get somebody's leads from another company, because if I give somebody 10 leads, Jerry, that I'm already active, that could be 6 months worth of work. And all they have to do is call them. Hey, John, it's me at the other maintenance supply house. Okay, I'm going to send you some cash. Great. Give me the home address. Here it is. I'm going to send you a $1,000 order. So these leads became very valuable.
So you're saying that you may have identified the maintenance person at this particular company, and he is buying from Coleman. But he's such a good lead that if you could also invoice him, or you could sell that lead so somebody from Star or Progressive could also, invoice him, then you've multiplied the money that you're making off of this one taker.
Absolutely. And takers were just as guilty. Takers were just as bad at what we were doing. They were taking money and cash and prizes and gifts in return for ordering supplies that they might have needed or might not have needed. They might have even thrown them away. I heard stories and stuff like that.
All right. So once we had our agreement that you were going to be our cooperating witness, then we sat down and we really picked your brain. We used you and your partner, Neil, as our instructors to really train us about the business, how it worked, and then also to tell us who were the heavy hitters, who were the people that you knew in the Philadelphia area who were making millions of dollars doing this. How did you feel about providing this information to us and telling us about those people that you knew were doing way more as far as, illegal, immoral, and unethical business practices?
The information I gave you, Jerry, were the people that trained me in this industry. But I remember these guys. These guys trained me in the business. And I remember my agreement with my lawyer, with the FBI and the postal inspector is one day they're going to know who you are. But yet I didn't have a problem with it, knowing I can look my kids in the eye and say I need the help. I need to identify how the industry works, point out the big hitters in the area, and explain to you how this is done. And also, I recall you giving me leads to get into these companies, so you can get an idea how they did their business also.
Yeah, and those leads were actually fictitious companies that my partner, Ed Matthias, and I developed. And so we had developed fictitious businesses throughout the United States. And I know we had one in Dallas, and we had one in Denver, and we had one, someplace probably in California, New Jersey. I think we developed 8, it was either 6 or 8 fictitious companies. We actually had business services, we had post office box, we had telephone numbers. It looked like these were actual businesses. We created lead cards, we gave them to you, and we told you to give them to other companies. And then what we did is we set up a bank of phones. And for each company, depending on what phone it is, so if this particular phone rang, then we know it was the fictitious company that we created in Denver. If this phone rang, we know that somebody was calling the fictitious company in Denver. And then myself, Ed Matthias, and other FBI and postal inspectors man those phones every single day. And we played the undercover role, so we would be the people who would pretend that we were the secretary. Then we would take on the identity of the taker. The role that I played, the undercover role I played, was as a grandmother by the name of Grace Jeanette. And everybody loved Grace Jeanette. You know, like I said, she was a grandmother, and she loved the gift certificates because she would use them to buy presents for her kids. And of all of the undercover roles we set up, Grace Jeanette was one of the favorite takers because she was so sweet and so greedy. And they just loved it. And they really wrote down the name of my grandkids, and they really groomed me. And really, you know, it was Jerry Williams and not this person, in Denver. The same thing is that we created a taker, and when the person called, we would say the taker had died. And it was hilarious, you know, as investigators, just to listen to the telemarketers tell us, oh my God, we were such good friends and he was such a good guy. You know, let me send you a sympathy card. And of course the guy didn't exist, but we could just see, you know, the methods that they used. And every single phone call, of course, was recorded. And every single phone call was evidence for our case. And we would not have been able to set this undercover up if it wasn't for you passing those leads on to these companies and the people that had trained you.
And I remember that. It wasn't hard for me to get these leads in the companies, Jerry, because once they knew I shut down, they didn't know how or why I shut down. They were coming to me. They wanted me to work for them. They wanted to buy my leads from me. So what I did was, as these people came to me, Dave Fleischer, Eddie Tunick, the Stan Schoflers, I said, okay, well, here's 10 leads. Why don't you start with them? We'll split the commission until I make a decision what I'm doing. So they were excited to get these 10 leads. And Jerry, I don't know if you remember, you came to me and you started to ask me about a guy named Rich in Washington Township. And you said, who's this guy? And what happened was this guy, Rich, went to somebody's dumpster and stole leads from somebody. And he got jammed up because he was greedy of stealing somebody else's leads, which were FBI informants. I remember that. I remember he said, who is this person? I don't know. He said, well, he got a hold of our leads and nobody gave them to him.
Actually, it ended up that we went after 14 companies, and we only started out with 8 fictitious leads and looking at about 8 companies. And so there were a number of companies, about 6, who either stole our leads or were sold our leads, who started calling us too, and we weren't even after them. So that was unfortunate of them, to also get tied in with us. But at the end, we had 14 different companies in the industry that on one single day, we actually had 16 search warrants executed, on a 2-day period, 8 on one day, 8 on the next day. And we basically took down the entire light bulb industry, or telemarketing, business-to-business telemarketing industry, and within 2 days, because even if we didn't come to you on those 2 days, you were thinking we were coming to you those 2 days, and you stopped your business. You were very lucky in a sense that we got to you first, because you ended up doing, how many months were you actually in that halfway house, and where was it?
I was sentenced by the judge to 1 year and a day in a halfway house. Me and both my partner got the same sentence. And it was in the summer, and I ended up doing 9 months there for good behavior. And also, Jerry, my lawyer went back and said, can I come home 1 week in a month for my kids? So the judge honored that also. I don't know if you heard about that later. I was allowed 1 week in a month, I was allowed to come home, which was good, because I was home for Halloween, I was home for Thanksgiving, I was home for Christmas, so forth and so on for the 9 months. And then I had to do a total of 10 months total, but the last month was in my home, where they would call you every night and every day, a couple hours and stuff like that. And then I ended up doing 3 years probation. Now, Neil, on the other hand, my partner, which we were sentenced together, he was at that place for 1 month, and he got what they called a hot urine. I didn't know this terminology, so I spent time in a halfway house of people just getting out of jail. So they came in with shackles and took him to a real jail. I think he heard stories in the halfway house where you can smoke a joint and drink something and it won't show up. I don't know why you would want to get involved in anything like that anyway, but that's what he did, and he took him out in shackles. I was a little sick for the next 2 weeks just thinking of what happened to him. So, I mean, I was a good, I was very good when I was there. I just wanted to do my time and get out of there.
Where did your kids think you were?
My kids thought I was traveling for a business.
Do they know now?
I told my kids everything. Yeah, they know everything. Yeah, I didn't want to shelter my kids from anything. I want them to know the truth so they can grow from it and learn from it. And I can explain to them why education is so important.
Well, at the end of the case, because you don't have this information, but at the end of the case, we had 24 convictions, and those people all went to jail. They didn't go to halfway houses. We had one guy who actually decided he was going to go to trial and fight us on this, and he ended up being sentenced to 8 years. He was over at Fort Dix, and I'll put that article about his case in the episode show notes. You have a link to that. But it was a very successful case, undercover case, again, with 16 search warrants and 24 convictions. And it did take a dent in the business-to-business telemarketing in the Philadelphia area for a while. I don't know who's doing those cases now. I don't even know if the FBI or the postal inspector are working those type of cases now, because, of course, there's so many other issues and concerns, and a lot of the things that the FBI does now have a nexus to terrorism. I hope somebody is working these telemarketing investigations and stopping businesses from being victimized. So many times you hear about telemarketing fraud, and we all get those calls. We all get those calls. Tell me about that. When you get a telemarketing call at home, because I know you do, what do you think? What do you say to them?
I actually tell them they don't know how to sell. You got to step up your game a little bit. Seriously, I do that sometimes. But I mean, nowadays I just hang up on them. But the first few years, I had a little bit of a good time with it, talking to them and stuff like that. But at this point, I don't have the time of day, and I just hang up.
Well, we're just about done now.
Well, let me ask you this question, which brought up another question. What'd you do with all the light bulbs and duct tape and everything you gathered? Where'd you put it all? I guess that was all evidence, right?
Yes, because all of our companies actually were invoiced and actually received this. And so there's a big warehouse in Belmar, New Jersey that we rented out. And all of the light bulbs, cleaning supplies, duct tape, all of the stuff that we received was taken to this warehouse. And we worked out of that warehouse for 2 or 3 years, not only gathering that information, but all of the searches, those 16 searches, all of the evidence, all of the paper, all of the invoices was taken to that warehouse in Belmar, New Jersey. So I have pictures of it. So I'm going to put pictures of the warehouse and stacks of papers and lighting supplies, because you're right. Every single one of those, not only do we have to do the invoice is evidence, but also what they sent us. Because we had cases where people did invoice us for stuff they never sent, because the takers, like Grace Jeanette, would say after a while, look, I want to buy your light bulbs, but I got a whole stack of light bulbs in the storage, and wait for that person to say to us, well, why don't I just invoice you and not send it? And so we did that too. So all of that stuff was in this huge warehouse. And again, I do have pictures of that. And so I'll make sure that's on the episode show notes. Good question.
Well, no, this was great. I'm glad I got to reminisce about 20 years ago and everything we went through together.
All right. So I know one of the things that you're doing right now, if you don't mind me mentioning it, is that you are, trying to write a book that kind of warns people about telemarketing fraud and what to look out for. Would you like to give out any tips to warn them, especially about business-to-business telemarketing fraud? What should businesses be doing to make sure they're not a victim?
I actually wrote something down about some of the things I wanted to talk about the book. I actually titled it, Why to Say No to Salesmen. In the beginning, I actually thought about writing how to say no to salesmen, to teach people how. But what I learned over the years, awareness is better than anything. And so instead of saying how to say no to salespeople and giving you the tools, because think about it, Jerry, if I would have taught If I would have wrote a book about Charles Ponzi in the 20s, it'd be irrelevant today. If I wrote a book about the Nigerian prince, it's irrelevant today, okay? So I wanted to write something that's timeless, where people understand when people have leverage on you. We're good at what we do, whether we're a teacher, whether an FBI agent, or a hairdresser, or anything like that. But then we go through different stages of life. Our kids get married. We have funerals in our families. Me, I had to see a lawyer. Through that lawyer thing, I got taken advantage of. I was sold something, and I was taken advantage by a lawyer.
The first one that you had.
The first one that I had. Also, I buried both my parents in the last few years, and they were trying to sell me unwanted and unneeded products that I didn't need. But I didn't know that because I was looking at these people like professionals, and they're not. Jerry, and I know you wanted to talk about the telemarketing, but also if you look on TV, my father told me at a young age, he says, Karl, the two easiest things to sell anybody, anything that'll improve their looks and anything that'll make them money. And that's what you want to sell. That's what my father's, and that's why us as consumers, we'll sit there and watch lotions on TV and flimsy exercise equipment, and we'll think that this will fix our problem. And we'll also watch these things about becoming rich. And when in fact, the only people that are becoming rich are the people selling these things. So the book, it covers a lot of different things about the leverage that people have on you when you're in a bad situation or in a good situation. Whether it's a wedding, they want to take, you want the best of everything. Oh, it's a funeral. You know what I mean? You're in a bad place. Let's take care of this. And the book says a lot of this and teaches you what to be aware of. And it will be timeless.
That sounds like a good book. As a matter of fact, I've really enjoyed our conversation. We should think about taking this on the road, kind of going out and talking about fraud, from the investigative side and also as the subject side. So we'll talk about that later. But one thing I want people to know, because they're probably thinking, how did Jerry and Karl get together? But from the very beginning of this case, I knew that you were a neighbor, that you lived in the same town. As soon as, the information came about Granger and we looked into the case, I saw that you lived in the same town that I do, Washington Township. And I don't know if you remember this, but our kids went to the same summer camp.
It was sports camp. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. Sports camp together. Yes, absolutely. And that's how we had a bond, because I wasn't taking it personal what you were doing. You were actually, I felt the compassion, like you were helping me get through this. And I felt the need to help the FBI to you're right, this is wrong. And I shouldn't have been caught up in this. I wish somebody would have helped me earlier, but that's all right. I'm glad I was able to help out and stuff like that. And the reason we're actually together today, after all these years, I saw something on the internet that said Jerry Williams, ex-FBI agent, wrote a book. I said, that can't be my Jerry Williams. And that's when I reached out to you on Facebook and said, congratulations, good luck. And that's how we started connecting and have us sitting here. I was at your book signing.
Yes. So it is really funny. There's other episodes of FBI Retired Case File Review where other agents have talked about developing relationships with the people that they investigated. And I know one of the things, and in this, I actually have other people that I still communicate with on LinkedIn or Facebook and see how they're doing, because I feel that definitely the person needs to feel the consequences of their criminal behavior. But I also know that what people do is not necessarily who they are. And so if I meet somebody and, they were just made a bad choice, then, you can still develop a relationship. And because you were our cooperating witness and that we worked this together for 2 or 3 years, before you even went away to the halfway house, and because, my kids were going to the same summer camp that your kids were, it was necessary that, we had this even beyond cordial relationship. So, I'm glad to get to know you, and I'm absolutely thrilled that you're on the up and up, and that you're legitimate, and that things have gone well for you.
Actually have. Thank you, Jerry. This was great. I had a good time with this. I like the idea of going on the road.
And that's the end of the interview. As always, back at jerrywilliams.com, you'll find a photo of Karl and photos of the team that worked Operation Duct Tape. And you'll find newspaper articles about some of the other businesses that were convicted in this telemarketing scheme. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to share it with your friends and family and associates. I make it easy for you. At the bottom of this episode's show notes, you'll find all the social media share buttons. And also, let me know if you enjoyed the show, because it was a special one for me. Talking about special, I need to give a special shout out to a few listeners that I have been communicating with who are actually in the application process to join the FBI. And it is so exciting and rewarding. I kind of feel like I'm going on this journey with them. I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited for you. Keep in touch and let me know what happens. I want to wish everyone listening a very, very happy and safe Thanksgiving. I want to remind you, again, if you haven't yet picked up a copy, either ebook or trade paperback of Pay to Play, please do so and think about getting a few copies for your friends and family. Don't forget that I have a gift for you too. I created that 2017 FBI G-Man calendar, and all you need to do is sign up for my newsletter, and you can have that PDF file to use as is or to make as many copies as you want. I'll be back with you that first Saturday in December. This episode was sponsored by FBIRetired.com, the only online directory made available to the general public featuring retired FBI agents and analysts interested in showcasing their skills to secure business opportunities. I want to thank you for listening and hope you come back for another episode of FBI Retired Case File Review with Jerry Williams. Thank you.